Hi everyone, and welcome to How Good's Footy in Asia, AFL Asia's official podcast. We're up to podcast number 13, and we have gone straight to one of the aces in the pack, in Eric Kerro Kerrison. Welcome to the podcast, Kerro.
Thanks, boys. How are you?
Yeah, going well. For those that aren't too sure about who Kerro is, if you don't know, you don't know much about footy in Asia, but Kerro is the self-proclaimed AFL Asia's best president, but one of our favourite sons and one of the best blokes you'll meet in Asia, let alone in footy circles. Over to you, Bill. Bill, how's things over your way in Saigon, mate?
Can't complain. We're normally. What's that?
So that'd be a first.
Yeah. No, it's not Saigon I complain about. Yeah, this is a podcast. I'm very curious to see how it pans out. Something people outside the country might not know is that, we do have a bit of internal feistiness, which keeps everyone on their toes. So keep an eye out for that throughout the episode. Look forward to it.
I don't expect curiosity to kill the cat today. Let's put it that way.
Nah.
Best behaviour today, boys. Best behaviour.
We've got Billy Bang Bang Krang over there in Saigon. Obviously, Kerro's in Hanoi, the capital of Vietnam. Boys, before we kick off, it's getting to the pointy end of the AFL season. 2 rounds to go, plus 1 game tonight with Brisbane and Gold Coast. We haven't had much to crow about down the bottom of the ladder there, Kerro, with North Melbourne and the Crows. But interesting couple of rounds coming up, and I think 3 pivotal games from mine, which will ultimately determine who's going to finish in the 8. And that's the Geelong-Richmond clash this Friday night. I think West Coast have literally shot themselves in the foot for a finish in the top 4. But that game is going to give someone an upper hand going to the finals. And there's 2 more games, I guess, that are going into the last round. The GWS and St Kilda game, that could ultimately decide who makes the 8. And Port Adelaide versus Collingwood is the last game of the minor round season, and we expect that on that Monday night could be the difference as to whether Collingwood makes it or not, and where exactly Port finishes and whether they actually get a home final, because Port could slip down to 3rd, which would see them playing all of their finals in Queensland. So there's a lot to play for. Kerro, firstly to you, where do you think things are going to go, and who's ultimately going to win the grand final come October 24?
Oh, it's a tough one, mate, but good news for Adelaide is the 2 wins they've had in the first 8 days of September.
Yeah.
That's more wins than Essendon have had in September for 16 years, so they're moving well there. And North Melbourne have got a plan in place. We were aiming to try and get a couple of higher draft picks this year, so we're playing consistent football, which is fantastic to see. But for me, you can't look past Richmond, really. They're playing good football at the moment. A quality team, and they've got the depth in their squad, I think, that a couple of the other top-end teams are lacking.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I've been pretty critical of Geelong sort of bowing out once it gets to the big stage. And I'll tell you what, if they're ever going to get a premiership for the likes of Gary Ablett and Joel Selwood at the back ends of their career, and the likes of Harry Taylor, this has got to be the year. So we can't dismiss them. That's why I think Friday's clash is going to be pretty important in the whole scheme of things. What about you, Bill? You basically shot yourself with a double barrel in both feet the last 2 games, old Melbourne, and probably really shown the real Melbourne for the
ticker
that's teased us, given so much disappointment. You've been a realistic D supporter. First, tell us about your Ds, and then give us your update on where you think things are going to go in the business end of the season.
Yeah, well, thank God I've lived in since I was 20. I've lived in outside Victoria. I don't know how my family do it. They've still got their chins up. They think Simon Goodwin's got a plan. It's an absolute debacle. In terms of the season, I do feel like this year's a bit different for Geelong. I think that the September struggles, they're not as pronounced as, they look bad over the time, but the fact that they're there every year and do give themselves a shot. And then coming to this year, I think they're very aware that they have let those chances slip, probably for a decade. And I just feel like they've been looking at this since before the second season even started. They've been planning for this more than anyone. And they just look like they're making every post a winner. Aside from that, I'd love to see Brisbane or Port get on a roll just for something different, but it's probably Geelong and Richmond. I think the way the ladder might line up, they might line up for another preliminary, which would be an absolute ripping game.
Yeah, I'd love to see Brisbane go a long way into October, but Harris Andrews' injury the other night
Tough.
is going to be really tough because this is when you start coming up against your
The monsters.
Your Pippins and your Dixons of the world and your Tom Lynch's. So they're going to have their work cut out. I can't see West Coast winning and making it all the way through now. They've just shown that Queensland form's poor form for them.
Yeah.
But Port Adelaide, they've played above themselves this year, and Charlie Dixon is going to have a fair say, but it also makes their borderline quite one-dimensional. So they'll need to pull a few rabbits out the hat if they're going to surprise a few deep in October. All right, boys, we'll leave it there. There's not much footy happening really in Asia. Good to see Shanghai back training again last night, and the Bali Geckos are back out there and Potts Jakarta Bintangs. But we've got plenty of teams still training. Much happening in Vietnam, Kerro, before we actually start the podcast?
Yeah, I think there is. As the South are training. They're training Wednesdays and Saturdays down there. In the North, we moved away from Saturdays and went to a Tuesday, Wednesday. Wednesdays girls only. We had 38 at training in Hanoi last night, and the girls on a Wednesday have been getting anywhere from 14 to 16. And we start our Hanoi League in Saturday week on the 19th, where we've got a 4-team league that'll be going for 3 months.
Brilliant. I think we've got that later on in the script, Bill, but I think we might just, before we go any further, Kerro,
Yeah.
you've had some AFLX competitions, and it's going to be around the similar line. Can you just give us a bit of an understanding as to, obviously this is going to be a season rather than a one-off event, but are the teams different? What sort of mixture? Is there a draft system involved with this one as well?
Yeah, it was President's pick this year, just because I wanted to try and get a team formulated that would beat the Herons and stop Jake carrying on like he's just won the English Premier League with Liverpool. So we've got the 4 same teams, Buffaloes, which is where Bill is. Bill also has the record of being the first bloke that was ever cut by a team in AFLX, thanks to Potsy at the Langers. So well done on that, Bill.
Don't know who the Langers are. Never heard of them.
So it's going to be the same bit of fun, bit of banter. We're trying to incorporate the same rules you would get at a tournament, where you get there on time, you start losing goals if your team's late onto the ground, sin bins, all of that sort of thing. So whilst we've been training a lot, getting great numbers, now we can start getting them used to what it would be like to go on a football tour for next year when hopefully things open up. So we've got the Crabs, the Herons, the Langers, and the Buffaloes. So it's the same 4 teams. And we think it's a great concept, 9-a-side, soccer fields. And I think it's great for Vietnam if we can keep continuing to grow this with the possible future having an internal Vietnam league.
Yeah, I think it's the way to go. Particularly, I think COVID's really presented that to clubs that if you're going to think outside the square and keep the continuity going, you've got to develop it domestically. Just for those viewers that may be unaware, in previous AFLX tournaments based in Vietnam, there's been a selection criteria which has been around a franchise player, female players, local players, rugby,
correct.
old fellas and whatnot. Is that still the same for this upcoming Hanoi AFL season?
Probably slightly different because the Saigon boys won't all be coming up in one big hit this time. And also the rugby and the Gaelic guys have their own competitions that they're doing. They've just started a Gaelic league here for September, which is being played every Sunday. So we've got a few of those, so we don't have as many to choose from. So basically, if you played for a team last year, you're in that team, and then we try to even up the top-ups coming in.
Okay, so Bill's a top-up then?
No, well, Bill's a Buffalo at the moment until he gets sacked.
Haven't been kicked out, have I?
No, not yet. They still like Bill.
Bill's starting to become a bit of a club slut of the AFLX of Vietnam by the sounds of it.
Oh, he's a mini rooster, really, I suppose.
All right, it'll be interesting to see who Rooster plays for when he gets up there. But more importantly,
he's a Langer.
He's a Langer.
He's already a Langer, yeah, mate. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's
no one else wanted him.
Start of the podcast. We'll let him lubricate their Bill before we fire away. Billy Bang Bang Crank.
I'm surprised you didn't head down to the local beer hoy for the interview. What if you got a few cans?
Oh, look, Billy, nothing but the best here.
Can't see.
Hanoi beer.
Hanoi beer.
Wouldn't exactly. So let's go way back, and tell us a little bit about your upbringing. South Australia, I assume. Your dad was a federal cop, so tell us how all that came together.
So going back, this probably comes up a little bit in what people don't know about me. I was adopted when I was 16 days old. Mum and Dad had three daughters already, and Dad just wanted to get the right child the next time. So instead of risking having another daughter, he decided to go and pick me out. So as I let my sisters know, I was chosen. Mum and Dad didn't really much have a choice with them. So they've only ever been Mum and Dad, and that's all I've ever known. And we grew up in Elizabeth, which was a sort of satellite city where they brought a lot of the 10-pound poms over from England. And so Mum came over as a nurse, Dad came over as a copper, and we stayed there until I was 15 years old.
Did you have any football involvement through those early years?
So I was,
or sporting, I should say.
Having English parents, I was predominantly a soccer player, and obviously having a look at me, a bit ethnic looking. So, Wogball was my area of expertise. Probably toyed with football for 1 year when I was a kid, and didn't really take on AFL until I'd moved to Canberra when I was 15 and 16.
Kerro, going back on those times, Elizabeth was, for those that aren't from South Australia, it's a pretty rough area of Adelaide, the northern suburbs, the heart of the north. What was it like moving from the heartland of the north, rough around the edges, to Canberra? What was it like moving with that? Going to federal state?
But the hardest thing for me was the difference in the schooling system and your friends too. So you're a 15-year-old kid and you've got mates that you've had playing sport with the whole time growing up. And then all of a sudden, for me, 15 wouldn't be the ideal time to uproot and take a kid from one state to the other. And looking back on it, there's nothing against Mum and Dad with that, but it's a very difficult time in your life as a 15-year-old boy to try and make new friends, to fit in with the sporting circles that have already got their own cliques. And going from a city like Elizabeth, where it was AFL and soccer, to a rugby predominantly town with rugby union, rugby league. So soccer players were a bit of an outlier when I first went to Canberra. And I didn't enjoy school there either, because it was a totally different curriculum. I'd gone from being an OK student in South Australia to just lost. So Dad gave me the option, if I wanted to leave school early, I had to get a decent job. So I went and did a bit of a scholarship at the Commonwealth Bank when I was 17 and left school early.
Okay. All right, so we'll move on to the next chapter post the Commonwealth Bank, and I think you found yourself in the Navy. I just want to get a bit of a understanding of how long you did your service. Did you do a degree? Did you do a trade? Where were you based? Where did you do any travelling with the Navy, and were you in the firing line at all? Did you get to fire off a gun or a cannon or anything?
We're the Australian Navy, mate. We couldn't afford bullets. But I did 7 years. So I was in sonar originally. I loved the Navy time. I would have stayed longer, but I got out due to the kids. So did 7 years there, started off down in Melbourne, down past Crib Point there at HMAS Cerberus, doing the training there. That, if you're speaking of rough areas, Crib Point, Frankston, that's not exactly manly. So you do your basic training there, and then we headed up to Sydney, to Watson's Bay, which is quite a beautiful little spot there on the harbour for the category training. And I'd say within the first 8 months of being in the Navy, I then spent the next 9 months at sea, travelling Southeast Asia, which is where I fell in love with this part of the world, and probably fell in love with many other aspects of this part of the world, with the beautiful ladies that were presented to us.
All right, we won't go into the that particular chapter too much, but which particular? Obviously, there's some interest there in age, but where were you based? Where did you get up to? Were you just in Jakarta? Were you in Thailand, Vietnam? Where did you have?
I could tell you, but I've got to kill you. But no, I was on HMAS Swan, which was a destroyer escort based out of Western Australia at the time. And I think we did 11 countries and 17 ports. Wow. So we went to India, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong. Never did to Vietnam. So it was that sort of region that you do, and they're called goodwill tours. So you're basically travelling through the area, doing exercises with the different navies and playing a bit of sport with the expats that were in those countries, which used to be quite a big thing for the Navy. They come over and play a game of AFL in Vietnam or Singapore. And I think that's sort of dropped off in the military nowadays, where they don't have that aspect to their trips away.
So Kerro, did you actually play any AFL games in those tours?
I did. We played in Singapore. Played cricket in Singapore as well, and Hong Kong. Yep. And played a bit of soccer as well. So I remember playing once. We played soccer in Lamut in Malaysia, and we're playing against the local team there. And they've all rocked up, no boots, bare feet. And before the game, we had to walk up and down the field removing the big rocks. We could leave the little rocks on the field, but we just had to take the big rocks off, which playing in boots didn't really help us at all. The little locals just destroyed us with their fitness and the ability to play on rock. Yeah, it's a great time. I mean, if I was a young bloke, not sure what I wanted to do, for me, the Navy was exceptional. You can do a trade there, you can do a degree there, you can just be a general sailor. You know, you get paid well. You know, you get food and lodgings. It was a great lifestyle back then. I can't really comment on what the lifestyle's like in the Navy now.
Yep. So obviously Vietnam's become a really big part of your life. How did you what brought you to Vietnam, and what are the things that have kept you here? What have you loved the most?
Yeah, so I first came across to Vietnam probably going back seven or 8 years. Came over with an ex-partner at the time and my kids and her kids. Did a holiday here through Cambodia and Vietnam. Met a Vietnamese family here, and we kept in touch. And one of the brothers was one of the top chefs of Vietnam. He'd come fourth on Top Chef Vietnam. And when my partner and I separated, decided I just needed a break from things. The Australian government was giving out redundancies, which meant I could take the golden handshake, so to speak. Came over here, helped them get their business up and running, get their online presence going, etc. And they just fell in love with the place. Met the Swannies, met Keezy and Mick Francis at the Republic. And the rest is history. Yeah. It's a great place. I mean, for me, the lifestyle we can have here as expats, we're in a pretty good spot. You know, we couldn't have this lifestyle that we had back home in Australia. You know, because you've got to be working so long to get the money and to be paying your mortgages and your car loans, etc. Whereas here, you know, Billy and I, we can go out for a good night and, you know, spend $20, $25. That's because Billy falls asleep at 10 o'clock. But some of us spend more because we're out after midnight.
So nothing good happens after midnight.
Instead of spending $250, you're spending $25.
Yeah.
All right, Kerro, you mentioned that you met the Swannies through Keezy and Big Mick. I think you've been a mainstay and a huge part of the Swannies, which we'll go into a little bit later. What's been your most enjoyable memories of being a Swannie?
I think with the Swannies, it's the fact that you're girt by great people. You know, from the south to the north, the centre, to the guys that were here 20 years ago that started it, to the new people that come on board, to the way the club's grown and the culture. As a club, I think we're just accepting of anyone, whether you can kick the ball or not, whether you're old, you're fat, you're slow like myself, or whether you're a super talent. I think, that's what embraces people who are sometimes transient when they get to Vietnam, but then they find a second family, and they just fall in love with the place and the people around them.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a very common sort of story that we hear from all Asian footy clubs. That family in a strange place. Now, you then decided to really grab the bull by the horns in terms of the footy club. What was it that got you so involved and eventually taking over the ship?
So getting involved up in the north, and I remember the days, Keezy said, first things he said to me were, "Oh, you're from Australia, you play footy?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, very badly." He goes, "Yep, you're in."
That'll work.
Yeah, you fit the mould of the Swannies.
Yeah.
So I remember meeting Crazy Dan, who was going to show me the way to the training ground. Expecting, got the Australian mindset of, there'll be 15, 20 blokes here at training. We'll have a bit of a run and be all right. And I think the first training there, we had about 5. You do a bit of kick to kick. You look at each other and go, "Oh, well, let's go to the beer void." And, that embraced me early. Less running, more beers. That's going to sell anyone, isn't it? Yeah. So that was the early stages, and then we're pretty close in Hanoi. Hanoi as a city is probably a lot closer than Saigon, which is a bit more spread out as an area. So we'd catch up pretty regularly every Friday, watching the footy together as a small group. And I went away on a couple of tours. Cambodia, Thailand. Enjoyed myself there with the group. Got to know the guys in the south. Went down for a couple of the Reds versus White games, which were, always fun, and try to go down there and get involved as well a bit. And then when Keezy was leaving to go back to Australia, he said, "You want to take over the presidency, because we can't have one of those Southerners doing it." Never been a Southern president, and they never want one. I don't know why. So I said, "Yeah, look, I'll think about it." So we had the AGM there at the presentation night, and I was busy on my phone doing other things for entertainment that night when I got nominated and seconded, and that was it.
We suckered another one in to take all our crap. So you mentioned Keezy pretty heavily. Alongside him, the Swannies have got a lot of kind of forefathers that did a lot of our, establishing of the club culture. Who do you think has helped to shape you in your leadership of the club?
Yeah, so Fabo and I have good chats, and Fabo is good in that respect, where every president's got to leave a different mark of some way, shape or form, and try to leave something that they've added value to before they hand over the reins to the next person. And Mick and Travis as well, guys that have been here 20 years and, about what the club's about and what we're trying to do. And they've seen it evolve as well over the last sort of 5-6 years, from when the girls started to get involved, from being a boys club going away for footy trips, so to speak, to now it's a family club, really. The older blokes are all having kids, they're married. We've got a couple of younger guys coming through. We've got women that are growing and building. So that culture's a tough one to manage sometimes, that shift in the boys club mentality to the all-inclusive mentality sometimes takes a little bit of massaging.
It's a fair point you make. We're planning our grand final party at Al Fresco's, our sponsor, in the north and the south. And we sat down with Tim from Al Fresco's last night, and he said, "Oh yeah, we might have a band after the game and let everyone stay around and carry on drinking if they want." And so I thought that's a great idea. As soon as Tim left the table, Rod, our treasurer, said, "None of our players will be staying after the function. I'm not having us destroy what's been 3 good days in a great venue by getting carried away." So now, there's been plenty happen through the footy club over the past what is it, 4 years now as
4
president?
years, yeah. Great years. You missed the word great, Billy. 4 great years.
Great years, absolutely. There's
Yeah.
been some incredible stuff happen. What would be some of the things that you're most proud of in that legacy?
Wow. So for me, the turning point came when we went to Cambodia, and we had a loft group, and we lost by 167 points.
Yeah.
And I think the club was at its lowest ebb there when we went on tour with about probably 7 Swannies, and we roped a couple of rugby boys in and got obliterated. And we'd made some changes to the culture, the structure, the coaching structure, and what it meant to pull on the Swannies Guernsey. So, you know, we're pretty fortunate when it comes to footy in Asia. We've got some fantastic sponsors who've been here for 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, who put a lot of money into the club to help us reduce costs to grow the club. So we're not just playing for Vietnam Swans, we're starting to represent these companies that are Asia-wide, like Wide-Eyed Tours and Vietnam Backpacker Hostels, Al Fresco's group, etc. So something had to give at that point. And I think we made some changes there, and the turnaround within the club from the South and the North boys to embrace the new coach in Rocket and what he wanted to bring in, which was a little bit of professionalism. You know, no drinking after midnight the day before the game, not getting hammered the day before the game. Whatever you do on a Saturday night, that's fine, but we played the game. And I think that took a little bit for people to accept. Probably you know more, you were a player, Billy. But there was probably a bit of reluctance.
Well, I mean, the way I've taken every piece of guidance throughout my life, it was more about keeping things on the down low and making sure nobody leaked too much to Rocket. But it did change. No, it did change what it meant to play for the club a little bit. And we were, for one reason or another, at that time, we were losing that energy. And if you don't have a pointy end, if you're not trying to succeed, then everything will fall away. The fun stuff will fall off as well. So I get what you're saying. I did get breath tested on getting onto the bus quite a few times, though, in those transition periods.
Yeah. But after that transition period, I think it worked well for the club. And we went into a fairly successful period of time. You know, we've held the Indochina Cup since 2017. We hold it again in 2020 because it wasn't played. So I've got the trophy. I'll still engrave 2020 Vietnam Swans.
That's another one.
And, you know, the Asian champs for the girls, you know, we won the first ever one there. We'd lost a few players, but again, they were still very competitive, and that's growing again. And then last year we'd won Division 2, and we've still got the focus of wanting to get 3 men's teams and 1 women's teams into the Asian champs. So for me as a club, the growth is one of the things I've been quite proud of. And also, you know, Billy's one of the hardest workers. I take the piss out of him sometimes. He's a pain in the arse, the biggest pain in the arse you'll ever meet. You know that, Matty. But the bloke, he leads for this club. And there's now starting to get some other people around the traps in the north and the south that are starting to step up and take a little of the pressure off him so he can actually just step back, guide people. And then that's the next evolution of the club. It's what is our handover strategy? You know, succession planning. That's where we're at the moment as a club. We need a succession plan because Billy should enjoy his twilight years just being a player and falling asleep in the corner at 10 o'clock. That's where he's destined for. So that's where we're at as a club at the moment.
Yeah, it's probably a thing with that curfew that Bill never made it past 12 o'clock, so he got a good sleep.
Protecting the community health.
He was always safe.
9 p.m. curfew? Yeah, okay.
Good match up with Rooster.
Sleeps 1,000 places, Rooster.
Now, before I do get a bit on the personal side of it, we'll thank Bill.
Yeah,
I don't think many people know they see him as a a bit of a fullback of the century for the Vietnam Swans, and a real passionate person on behalf of Vietnam Swans. But people probably don't understand the plethora of work that Bill does on behalf of AFL Asia with his partnership with X Digital. All the flyers, all the stuff with our website, our maintenance comes through Bill. So while I'm there, I'm going to give you a plug, Bill, a fantastic ambassador for football within Asia with the Vietnam Swans and AFL Asia. The work that you do behind the scenes certainly shouldn't go unnoticed, and we're really proud that you're on board with us, and the mountain of work that you do is absolutely sensational.
Thanks.
Kerro, I'm going to get on a personal front with you. I went to the 2013 Asian Champs with the Japan Goannas, and I'm not a big fan of red and white, but I don't mind black, red and white. And once I went to that Asian Champs, I'm a bit of a Guernsey collector, and I didn't think much of the red and white I had at the time. And some guy, I don't even know who came up to me and said, "Oh, do you mind trading your Guernsey?" I said, "Mate, I'll trade, yeah." Wow. And I traded out the Japan Goannas for a Vietnam Swans Guernsey. And I was just wearing it last night.
Best movie you like.
One of the big rooster Guernseys, which we'll try and interview you in a few weeks. But fast forward to 2016 Asian Champs, hosted by the Vietnam Swans in Saigon. At the markets on the Friday morning, just having a bit of a nosy around for a bargain, and got a tap on the shoulder. And it's, "How you going, mate? Are you from Saigon, are you?" And I said, No, mate. No, I'm just I said, "Well, where'd you get Guernsey?" I ran through the story, and goes, "My name's Kerro. Nice to meet you. I think I've been the VP at the time, or heavily involved with the Swannies, and didn't think too much of it because, hadn't been really much on the scene." And then we go to, fast forward again, to the first Shanghai Cup in 2017, and roll up, and I'm lost. I've just got off the plane, and we're trying to make our way to the Wellington College to mark the grounds and get everything prepared. And there's Keezy. I knew who Keezy was, and then bloke out the window, you right, mate, you lost. And it just happened to be Kerro. And we hit it off and realised the situation with the marketplace. And I guess from that tour onwards, we ended up crashing out in the same room on the Sunday night of that Shanghai Cup, and we've been travelling buddies ever since. So wherever there's been an Asia Champs or an Indo-China Cup or something to do with Shanghai, you and I end up at the same hotel. And we quite often have a bit of a debrief and a beer on the last, the roadie for the last night. And I really appreciate those times and the friendship we've formed as one of probably my best mate in Asia, let alone.
Yeah, it's been good, mate. It's those things that keep people sane, I think, as well. You know?
Yeah, we don't really go down the personal storyline too much. There's some people that we interview that we don't know much about, but I think there's ones that we need to celebrate as well. And you're a true celebration of footy in Asia, mate. The larger-than-life characters, can't have enough of them. And the fact that you're president of one of the clubs and one of the most successful clubs at this point in time is absolutely tremendous. And you celebrate everyone's success. You don't point the finger at anyone. You call a spade when you need to. But we've certainly loved the influence and the impact that you've had and the leadership you provide out of Vietnam. It's second to none, and truly amazing. But we'll go into a little bit more detail about what's been your 3 best footy tours since you've been involved with AFL Asia footy.
Oh, Jesus. We've got the buzzer ready to beep out the swear words.
I think things have been a bit too wholesome and backpatting for a while. Let's go. Back to the gutter.
Well, I do remember one, Matty, with you actually in Manila. I think we'd stumbled across a little Italian restaurant, had a bit of spag bowl, and next morning we've still got a little bit of Dolmio grin going on after the spaghetti bolognese the night before. I love Manila, love it. Probably go there more if they knew how to get to the airport and fly out of the country as well. But unfortunately, the Philippines sort of struggle with leaving the Philippines, so we don't get there as often as we'd like. Cambodia is always a cracker. Great people in Cambodia, great footy club. Can't say enough about the guys that run the Cambodian Eagles. We're pretty close with them as a club, I suppose, because we've got that border crossing and we've got the Cannibal Run, and that's always a fun trip over there. I love Shanghai. I think Shanghai is a beautiful spot. I think it was ruined after year one. I think the change of the days, Saturday and Sunday, for the Shanghai Cup and the AFL game probably ruined that a little bit. But I think also the difficulty to get people into China is not one that is helping clubs, want to go to the Shanghai Cup. It's a fairly expensive sojourn for the clubs. But my all-time favourite is it's the trips to Vung Tau. The meaning that Anzac Day gives us, the passion that the diggers come over with, Ron and Elsa and Stan and co, who are diggers in the time during the conflict, who are always coming over, beautiful people, an embracing community, and not just for the games and the after parties, but what it means to the club to go down there and pull on the Guernsey and represent Vietnam.
Yeah, outstanding. Bill, before we do go to your next segment or next area of expertise, any questions?
Em ơi, có một bia.
He said, younger sister, can I have one beer? Younger sister translates actually to wife in this case. It goes for anyone who you expect to do something for you. We've got one interesting angle, which I was gonna head down, but Shane Simpson's jumped on, Kerro, and he'd like to know, as you've moved up through the ranks of Asian footy, have you received any match payments? And if so, what's the best payment you've received? And what would the going rate be these days? Is there some COVID discounts or?
No discounts. You get what you pay for, Billy. Now, Shane Simpson's pretty good that he's come on, actually, because he's promised me. I played for Macau Lightning at the last Asian Champs and made the All-Asian team, obviously, for Macau. I was offered 2 pies and a can of Coke. And I just want to say to this point, Simo hasn't paid up.
The pies aren't that easy in Western Pattaya.
His problem's not my problem, Billy. But yeah, so if Simo, who looks like he's probably swallowed the whole bakery, could pay up, that would be great.
Yeah, okay. So it's more that there are still match fees owing. And one of our best engagers on the podcast, Yoshi from Osaka, he's congratulating you on the culture at the Swans and the work you've done, but mostly, did you get to have any fun with Libba in 2016?
Well, Yoshi's definition of fun and mine might be totally different. But I actually did get to have a beer with Libba and Dal before the event. They were staying at the same hotel as we were, so we were sitting around the pool having a beer and just having a quiet chat. And 2 great young blokes just enjoying a down season, at the end of the season, enjoying some time with their friends, Tommy Dura and co, in Vietnam and making the most of the break.
Yeah, that's right. From that beer, we were actually able to, I'll say we as a club, but it was you sitting there with the phone in hand. We were able to create a bit of a stir. We put on the Swannies website that the boys had been dropped for the Saturday.
Yeah.
And I think it seemed the coaches made a pretty decent decision in the end. They probably weren't going to be that good for the squad.
Yeah, I think Dal was probably more up to it than Libba would have been at that point in time. He was too busy with the hairdresser and getting the locks taken care of at Saigon. It was a great weekend, actually, the Asian Champs at Saigon. I thought it was an awesome time.
Yeah,
it was incredible.
One of the best, if not. There's been some rippers lately the last few years. Malaysia's put on a superb one, and last year was terrific as well. But that one in Saigon's, right up there with the best.
I want to touch on a few of the presidential issues of your reign, so to speak. Local development. How important have you seen it as to what the club's been doing over that period, and how important is it going forward?
I'd say we've been trying in the local development space. It's extremely difficult unless you've got the funding to actually focus someone on that full time. It's otherwise, if we're just getting them along to Wednesdays and Saturdays trainings where we don't have a program in place, we're going to lose the boys to soccer. They're getting they're getting games of soccer every weekend, playing for competition points, playing in a competitive league. The girls will probably grow quicker than the boys because they don't have that. They don't have the soccer. They don't have the extracurricular sporting activities that the boys get the opportunities to play in Vietnam. So we're noticing in Hanoi, we've had the same couple of Vietnamese boys for 2 or 3 years, and in the south we've had the same 3 or 4 core group for 3 or 4 years. It's not grown. This year in the north, we've now got 8 Vietnamese girls that are all new this year, and they're bringing more and more Vietnamese girls in. So for me, I think the growth will be more rapid in the female side for the Vietnamese than the male side. But I still think it's important. The game's not going to survive just on fat old expats having a kick at the football. We've got to engage the local community to keep the game growing.
Yeah, that brings me to the next question I was going to ask. 2020, geez, if we had a crystal ball, it's definitely doom and gloom on face value. But in our case, in the Swans case, and especially in your backyard in Hanoi, it's turned into what could be, if this all carries forward, a real watershed year, or a domestic league, the women's squad becoming the bulk of numbers. You mentioned 35 being at training last night.
Yeah.
I assume that half of those must be women who are going to go again tonight. The 16 tonight were also heavily there last night. So these are incredible things that have come out of possibly yours, especially being able to look inwards rather than maybe always outwards and what's our next tour or what are we doing. So how will that change our direction going forwards, do you think, this year of everything going wrong and all of a sudden some things start going right by mistake almost, not by design anyway?
Yeah, I think with the girls, we had no choice. Chia was stuck in Australia. She wasn't going to come back and be able to drive the girls as she was doing. She was stuck in Australia and separated from her family. So I put it on Nini in Hanoi, and you've been working down there with Naomi in Saigon. Chia's not in country. Someone needs to step up and keep driving the girls along. Otherwise, it could just die off and we could lose a year. And I said to Nini, okay, if you can get me 15 to 20 girls, we'll give you your own night for training in Hanoi. And to Nini's credit, we started off slowly. We got 8 to a Tuesday. Next week, we had 16 at the Tuesday.
Wow.
And she went, okay, Kerro, I've delivered. Give me Wednesday night for the girls only. And then Mark and Jack, her husband, put their hand up to take on the coaching responsibilities for them. And it just keeps growing from there for them. So for me now, it says Vietnam's focus should not be on external tours at the moment, but it should be looking at something similar to the scaffold on how do we take this momentum and develop an internal Vietnam league. We've got great club members and sponsors in the middle of Vietnam with Travi and Tin. There's a few other people that have been around, Tracy as well.
Yep.
And obviously Saigon and then Hanoi. So moving forward, the Hanoi League, we're looking at being an all boys and an all girls competition for 2021. We don't want it to be mixed. We want the girls to be able to go at it against each other and then the boys the same. But then we want to be able to go to Saigon, taking the teams down and having the games down there and forming a league.
Yep.
And then from there, you can possibly go, right, we're going to pick a team that goes to Indochina or a team that goes to the Asian Champions.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's a really, and I'm really looking forward to watching it over the next few weeks. It's a great story of, finding the real positives from tough situations, and something that hopefully is happening across the continent. Now, regarding this player payment scandal, I think you've been offered a new home. Apparently, I've never had a meat pie in Phnom Penh, but apparently Cambodia could trump Simo for any upcoming footy games. I'm surprised that the Eagles would want you after, we do see a lot of each other, the Swans and the Eagles, but there you go.
Well, Herf and I were very good friends, and Herf was one of the best hosts, I think, in
That's right.
in AFL Asia history, he assigned his driver to us for the whole night. No matter where we walked out of at 7 p.m, the driver would be there to take us home. Graham's a great bloke, and I've had some food there at one of their sponsors' places, the Aussie X Bar, whatever it's called. And look, Graham, we can probably talk offline. There's some Vietnamese club listening in, so just send me a PM, mate, and we'll talk about what the cost is.
Yeah, get a committee member, a half back, arguably, just for a couple of pies.
Mate, they've got to be. It's got to be pies and Diet Coke. I just got to watch my waistline. That's all.
I just done that before Bill finishes up his end. Got an arthroscope coming back in May or June. How's it all coming along?
Yeah. Knee's really good. I've got on the bike once. Promised myself to do it every day, and so did it the first day, and then realised that the motorbike's quicker. But I umpired last night, Matty, and followed your sort of example of umpiring, where you miss most of the easy free kicks and pay free kicks that probably weren't there. So I was doing a lot of that last night, but it's feeling good. I don't think I'll bother playing too much this year, and I think I've got my sights set on the Phuket Masters just to make sure I have a nice venue to come back out of retirement in.
Yeah.
I'll go one more question on the presidency stuff, and this one's a little bit more your views outside of the Swans, but
who's listening?
I mean, like Matty said, you do have views and you do share them as soon as they come to mind. But what has inspired you across the region, and maybe things that you've brought back to Vietnam or just been really impressed by across the other countries across Asia during your 4 years?
Well, I do love the president's meeting. I'm normally very quiet, sit in the corner and just let the 3 hours roll past. Inspired me. I do like what the SCAF will do. I do like that they have a league, in that region. That is something that I want to try to get us up to. And then recently seeing the Thailand Tigers with their new, what's the word for it, sponsorship of a local player, where they're bringing them along and they get them into a mentoring program. And I think that might be the way forward with local development too, the mentoring program, where we get a local kid who we think's got some talent, and we give him to a Billy Krang in Vietnam and say, well, Billy's going to be your mentor. We'll make, probably the wrong person to say there anyway. But get him to training, teach him about the game, work him in a position, and I think when you're looking at local development, I think the Thailand model there is fantastic. Across the board, I get on with most presidents. Obviously there's Paul Halliday, he's okay. But I just think anyone that's put their hand up to volunteer to do these jobs, they're going to say things sometimes that might offend or piss people off, but their heart's in the right place. They're just trying to do what's best for their region, best for football in their region. And at the end, we're all trying to do what's best for football in Asia. We've had discussions previously about forming an Indochina team, because there's so many countries coming in now, and you get yourself tied. All of a sudden, we come to the next year, we've got Cambodia twice, we've got Indochina, we've got Anzac, we've got this. The calendar's jam-packed. But then you've got Mongolia coming in, and blokes want to go to Mongolia. You've got Sri Lanka. Guys want to go to Sri Lanka. So we've had a discussion as to whether or not maybe we have an Indochina team that across the 5 countries, can we get a team that can go to Mongolia? Otherwise, then you've got to start dropping off something historically, which it's tough to do. Also Malaysia, we've got a home and away series with Malaysia. So as AFL Asia is growing, the pressure then comes on to, well, how do we give the guys variety in where they go and play football? Where do they want to go and play football? Maybe they don't want to go to Cambodia and Cambodia come here 2 times a year. Maybe they do want to go to one of these new countries and have a look. So it's a challenge that's going to take a while to work through.
As we mentioned before, with the travel restrictions, we've seen clubs like yourself, the Thailand Tigers, Red vs Blue Domestic League, Hong Kong, we're going to stage their own HAFL, another HAFL, not a breakaway, but their own Hong Kong AFL. So I think the silver lining that, I guess from an AFL Asia Hatton perspective, is that domestically the game is going to grow, and that's the silver lining of this pandemic, that people can sit on their hands and think, oh, poor us, or we travel a lot and we can't do much. And obviously there is some issues even with training, with social distancing protocols and so forth. But there's been some clubs that have come out the other end. And I guess one more that I'll mention is Beijing Bombers, who have, you know, they're not a massive club. They usually play in Shanghai for the Shanghai Cup, and they have the China shootout between them and Shanghai. But, you know, they've come away with this, and they've got girls out there training. They've got local Chinese players, and as long as I've been involved in Asia, they haven't had either of those. So you're seeing some real positives come out of the region as a result of this pandemic, and seeing clubs like yourself and the Ninis of the world in Hanoi taking something by the scruff of the neck and running with it, because this is how we're going to grow the game. This is keeping us engaged. This is something positive that's going to be really good for our club. So a lot of people thinking outside the box, and it's a credit to the clubs that have actually thought about it strategically this year and coming out the right end in that sense. Kerro, I'm going to go to something that's a little bit closer to home.
Just on that too, though, Matt, I think with COVID, international touring is going to be reduced next year because people are now watching their pennies. You know, they've been either without work or reduced payments. In Vietnam, a lot of people were on 50% of their salary or even lower for a set period of time. So obviously domestic travel is going to be cheaper for us to do as a club. And we may have to restrict external travel next year, possibly to just the Indochina Cup and the Asian Champs. That's a discussion we have to have internally. But I think money's going to be tight for a lot of people for the next 12 to 18 months because they've had to go into savings mode. And, you know, you look at some of our sponsors, you know, Wide Eye Tours, they don't see the tourism industry in their space, which is the families and the couples, you know, changing for the next 18 months to 2 years. And in mixed space, the backpacker, that'll probably change quicker because it's younger people that just want to travel. So that's another thing as a club we've got to address next year. So what are we going to do? What's going to be optimum for external travel, internal travel, noting that a lot of these guys had no work for 6, 8, 12 months by the time we get to next year.
Obviously, we're making some assumptions that travel is going to be open again, and you know, there's going to be no quarantining, and that's all taken out of the equation. But I think for the meantime, that domestic front is where things are at. Bigger clubs, and for those that really want to keep their players engaged and try and grow their numbers whilst this is all taking place. So watch this space. But I'm going to go something that's a little bit closer to home. You're in your home. You barked out some orders in Vietnamese before. Where unbeknown to us, that was, can you get a beer for us, love?
There was no love in there, I can tell you that right now.
That's right.
So let's rewind the clock to about 11 months ago. So you turn 50, and in the same week you marry your Vietnamese princess, and I guess someone that was one of the ones that travelled from Japan, and there's more that travel from Australia and further than what I did. It was a massive privilege to firstly attend your wedding, but to see you know, the love in the air, and a real, just a magnificent weekend, best wedding I've ever been to. But can you let us know how marriage life is? And secondly, you said you had some kids to a previous partner. You're about to enter fatherhood for the second time at the age of 51. So there goes your Navy pension. But more importantly, how's things on the home front and with Rue, and what does she mean to you, and what's it like second time around with fatherhood about to approach?
Well, she's in the room, just sitting in the back corner, so I'll have to look. She's great. and love her to death. She certainly made my life more enjoyable and not to be corny, but a bit more complete here in Vietnam. She's a pain in the ass, as all wives are. We know that. And anyone who's listening that's got a Vietnamese wife, they'll know when they say, I'm going to cut you, that sometimes you don't sleep easily. But she does a mountain of work for this football club too. She does all the phone calls for me to the grounds, to all the supplies. At Anzac Day, she's the one that's getting everything sorted for me using the Vietnamese. And Billy would be in the same boat where he needs someone who can speak the fluent Vietnamese. And a lot of us are so blessed to have Vietnamese wives. And she's a cracker. Bit lame, she's getting a bit fat and pregnant, but she's been told she's got 2 weeks to lose that. Otherwise, off you go. But the baby is due on the 20th of October.
Oh wow!
So the doctor said we've got to have a cesarean. So the doctor said you've got to have it between the 20th and the 27th of October. And she said, well, what about the 24th? I said, well, it depends if you want me to be there or not, because it's AFL Grand Final. So, and my birthday's the 21st. Everybody listening, take note. So Mia had to have her own identity. It's a baby girl. She's going to be called Mia. So we decided that 20-10-20's got a beautiful ring to it and easy for people to remember. So, I think Vietnamese girls, they do anything for you. Anyone that's got a Vietnamese wife will tell you they're the most loving ladies in the world. They do whatever you need. There's always food ready for you when you get home. They'll always go and cook something and prepare something. But on the other hand, we know that when we stuff up, we're in the doghouse for a little bit of time. And the doghouse gets locked up pretty quickly. So you've got to fight your battles, It's been good. Yeah, we've all been there. And I don't know if Japanese wives are the same, Matt, but I'm probably guessing they are.
Loving, caring dog houses there, but I don't get any food cooked for me, Kerro.
Really?
I'm not into miso and just eating rice every meal, so I like a bit of spicy stuff. Unlike the Vietnamese, the food's pretty plain Jane here. So, yeah, I do a lot of cooking myself. But when you're on a diet, mate, you do these things to.
No, I'm lucky as well. So Rue lived in China for 10 years and learned how to cook with the Chinese spices as well. So she cooks a fantastic meal. So the boys in Hanoi have sometimes come over and she just puts on a bloody, standard feast where the whole table's full of food. And so I'm lucky in that respect, as the body shows. I've sampled a little bit of it.
in a good paddock, so to speak.
Very good paddock, no drought here.
One last question on the fatherhood front. For any aspiring fathers like Bill, do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, look, Bill, it's the worst and the best times of your life. It really is. The hormones that they go through, they're great. They're not unreasonable in this 9 months at all. They don't get angry over nothing. But I look forward to Bill bringing and not bringing a little one into the world to join the Swannies family. It's a growing family. Andy's had a couple now. Rooster and Knock, they're expecting another one. I think we're probably going to have 20 kids in the Swannies family.
That's right. In
the next 18 months,
Amazing.
Which is great. We've got 3 sets of twins in Hanoi.
Wow.
Chung's had twins.
Wow.
Potsy's had a set of twins. James Warland's got a set of twins.
Wow.
So the future's looking bright.
Line.
Yeah.
Yeah, good water.
Great water.
Now, on a real serious note, today is the first anniversary of the passing of the great Danny Spud Frawley. Look, I do suffer from mental health issues and managing them on a daily basis, and I've had a pretty shit week. in all honesty. Do you have any advice for anyone out there, Kerro, that maybe going through some challenging times or from any personal experience that you'd like to share or put forward?
Yeah, and I was in the same boat, mate, before I moved to Vietnam. When I went through the separation and my kids decided that they wanted to spend more time with the mum and all that sort of stuff when they got to 15. And, you start reevaluating yourself and, you get into some dark places, as we all have as blokes. And, as blokes, we're supposed to be big and strong and tough and, this doesn't get to you, but it does. And I think it's a bit cliche, but we've got phones. You pick up your phone, talk to a mate. Even if you haven't spoken to them for 12 months, there's always someone at the end of the phone that will talk to you and talk you through it, because I can guarantee that the three people listening to the podcast, excluding us, have probably been in a dark place at some stage. But a lot of blokes get depression. There's a lot of fantastic people in AFL Asia. We've got Spargs and Winner from the VNet crew. They're always good for a chat. Yourself, Billy, myself, pretty much anyone's open for a chat. And no one's going to judge you. No one's going to judge you where you say, I feel like shit and I just don't know what to do. There's no judgment here anymore. And I think that's the best part about Asia as well. Back home in Australia, there is a little bit of judgment, I think, still in the depression stakes for blokes. You've got the Beyond Blue movements and all those sort of things, but I think we've got a very good family in Asia. And if you are suffering and you are struggling with depression, I think pick up the phone, call a mate. Even if you're not comfortable talking to a mate in the country you are, talk to a mate from another country and have a chat.
Yeah. Yeah, perfect. And the guys like the Pot Hallidays of the world, another resource.
He's another good one.
Yeah. Look, we've just hit the hour mark. We're normally finishing up here, and we must give credit to the tribal sport crew. We generally do our friendly fire around about now. And, we're running out of time wise because Billy needs to finish his lunch break, and I've just got the tap on the shoulder to leave the library. But hang on, we've got the call up. Just wait for this to pass, the storm to pass.
What do we got?
Grade 2.
Yeah, they had me at hello.
Got the old repeater on. It's got four things the same. He's looking for a grade 2 student. Anyway, Bill, before I finish up my end, is there any final thoughts and comments from you, or anything from the gallery?
I've been ready to change the friendly fire banner. The gallery was pretty good. The Champions trainer actually mentioned that he met Libber and didn't realise, forgot to get a photo. Regrets that to this day. Kerro's got a new mate. So no, I mean, I'd love to thank Kerro for everything he does for our club, and I think he does rub off a lot across the region, and it puts us in a great place because we get to help the region because of someone's effort, but it also helps football in every country by having these energetic people at the top, like yourself, Matty, who bounce off each other and really push things up and up for the guys that live in the country-based level. So thanks for all of that.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, and look forward to the upcoming, the next few months in Hanoi are exciting. Next year, we get to redefine things a little bit, get back into a few things we've missed. So looking forward to all of that.
Just before we finish up, Kerro, I thought Benny was the cutest dog in Vietnam, but you've obviously
here we go.
Up with that.
Benny's got nothing, mate.
Yeah, he's a cool cat. Whoever that dog that you've got, wow,
Yeah.
Very cute. Anything from you, Kerro, before we pull the bales off and drop the stumps to the ground on this magnificent podcast?
No, boys, thanks for your time. It's been enjoyable. As Billy says, it's exciting times in Vietnam. COVID hasn't stopped us. If anything, it's making us stronger and keep growing and keep pushing forward as a group and as a collective.
Yeah, really good example of galvanising your footy club, and massive silver linings for the Swannies, as per usual, always thinking outside the box. It's been a magnificent podcast. I think we've pulled the ace out of the pack and probably our biggest ace in Kerro. So it's not the unlucky 13, it's been the lucky 13. And we'd like, on behalf of AFL Asia, we'd like to wish you and your family and the Rooburger all the best with the upcoming birth of Mia, new little Swanee to the AFLW program. And can't wait to catch up with you, mate, and give you a big hug and have a quiet Pig's Ear or 3 or 13 at a beer hoy. And hopefully I can get over there and visit you before I move back to Australia. But you've been a magnificent guest, and we've loved having you on board. And thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Matty. Thanks, Billy.
All right, this is Matty Gale and Billy Bang Bang Crank and the King Kerro, all the way from AFL Asia's official podcast, How Good's Footy in Asia. We look forward to catching up with you again soon. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.